there. Oh gosh, I can't believe it's February. Where does the time go? That's 1/12 of the year gone already. Welcome. It's Anne here at Life LDC. I'm hoping that the L and the D part of the LDC come and visit us today. I've got a little treat for them later, so maybe they will come and join me. So I'm going to try and keep my blogs, my vlogs, short, informative, not necessarily always just informative from me, but informative things that I have discovered in the month, and that's why I'll be keeping notes. So in #1 video for 2018, the last video, I showed you quite a bit of my Fair Isle knitting from years gone by, all of them very colorful, and that's what people think about when they think about Fair Isle knitting. Not necessarily true, and I just want to share with you one of my prized Fair Isle possessions here. This is a Fair Isle that my hubby has. This is all natural shade fleece, hand spun, hand knit in the round. Sweater purchased in the Shetland Islands, in Shetland, when we were there on a visit. I saw this sitting on a chair, and I walked into this whole shop full of Fair Isle sweaters, colors galore, every color you could think of, and this was just sort of sitting like that in a chair all by itself, and that was it. I walked over, picked it up, held it up, said to the hubby, I hope this fits you because we're buying it anyway. We're buying it anyway. And poor guy, I don't know how long we've had this, but he's scared to wear it because I just, I don't want him catching it on anything, and I don't want it getting ruined. And honestly, I gotta get over this whole thing of not wanting to use good things, because when it's cold, nothing would be warmer than this Shetland sweater. So big surprise, I pulled it out. Now that I've got it out, when we go for WALK later, I'm going to tell him to put this on and he'll be toasty warm. So when you're thinking about Fair Isle, do not always think, oh, it's all sorts of colors and I'm not going to, I don't wear color. I don't want to wear color. This shows you that natural colors, grays, warmer colors, beige, fawn colored, browns, grays, blacks, they all go together and they make a beautiful Fair Isle. So think about natural colors when you're thinking about Fair Isle, if you're a little bit leery about all that color. Quick update on my personal project, what I've spent the whole January doing is, this is the Marie Wallen Fair Isle Club 3 Lyric cardigan. It's a limited edition membership. The membership was limited to 500. I'm at the point where now I need to pick up and do the sleeves. So that's going to be a lot of round and round with the whole body of the sweater swinging around each time. I'm contemplating knitting the sleeves separately, picking up stitches on the armhole steeks, and then 3-needle binding them off together. I have done that in the past and it's worked. So I'm thinking that that might be something I might want to do. I've tried this on actually, and without sleeves it makes an absolutely gorgeous vest or waistcoat, as the English might say. But it's beautiful. It was steeked up the front, and let me see if I can show you. There's, let me see here. There's the steek there. And I did a traditional 10 stitch steek. I like to do 10 stitches and cut right up the middle, and I will actually cut a steek on one of my vlogs one of my future vlogs for you. I love the inside of purl knitting. I think it's just as beautiful as the outside. And I've seen sweaters that put this stranded part on the outside. In particular, the one that I really noticed and would love to try and replicate. I'm a Harry Potter fan, and I don't know which Harry Potter movie it was, but it was when they were all invited to the a fancy dinner. Professor Slughorn, was that his name? The Slug Club. So Hermione goes, and she's got this beautiful cream on cream sweater, and there's a beautiful stranded yoke, but it's the reverse side that's showing. Really quite lovely. Would like to give that a go someday. So here's hoping that the sleeves, the next time you see this, the sleeves will be done, and that I'll be wearing it as a finished object, modeling it for you. So wish me luck. This is the hard part, those two sleeves syndrome, right? So Mason-Dixon has their letters, their blog, they call it Letters, and quite a while ago they featured Sonja Phillip, and since then I have been watching her website and her blog, but to be honest, she posts more on the Mason-Dixon letters than she does on her own blog. So when I saw that she was doing a class on Creative Bug, I thought, well, Creative Bug, perfect. It's $5 a month. You know, every month you get to download a class and keep it forever, and cheaper than buying one pattern. And to be honest, it was cheaper than buying one of the Sonja Phillip's sewing patterns that then I wouldn't know how to sew up. Even how simple they are, and watching her on Creative Bug put it together made it even easier. So I did that, and I have to tell you, I love it. So if you're interested in quick, simple, stylish, very easily customizable, so you can have your own style of sewing patterns, please check out 100 Acts of Sewing. Please check out the Mason-Dixon website. They have a great collection of goods there for you to buy, but even more importantly is the community. The group of people they have doing their letters is amazing. And another, which brings me to my next subject, A Year of Techniques by Jen Arnold Culliford. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Jen, but Jen wasn't really on my radar at all, but she put together this program of a year of monthly techniques so that a knitter can go through and try different things, and there's little small projects and everything. And one of those videos that's produced and projects that's produced focused on the dominance of yarn when you're stranded knitting, and that's being a subject of mine. I will put a link to my blog post in the notes on my Life Lackadaisical blog. I talked about this way back, and I've had people tell me it's not true, that it really is, there is no real yarn dominance and whatever, but I'm going to show you here that it really is a phenomena that you have to be aware of if you're going to do stranded knitting. So what I'm going to do is at the very end here, I'm going to insert a little demonstration of purl knitting, and I'll probably just sort of ramble on a little bit about that also. And I sort of like entertaining blogs, and these guys, well, you'll recognize them as soon as I show you them. Arne and Carlos. These guys, I love these guys. I became aware of this book, I don't know how many years ago. Hubby and I were on a vacation in Norway where we were going up and down the coast of Norway in the Hurtigruten. Again, don't know how to say it, but that's how I say it. Ferry service, makes 32 or 34 stops in 7 days. It was positively amazing. And every time we stopped, with any kind of length of time in port, we all ran off and went and looked for the yarn store. So in one of the yarn stores, I found this book. Of course, it was in Norwegian. And then it showed up in Canada. Here it was translated. And so 55 Christmas balls to knit. You have got to look up their YouTube channel. And when they talk about how this whole thing happened, how their nice Christmas book turned into like 55 Christmas balls to knit. He said it wasn't really quite the title that that they sort of expected. Anyway, you have to watch it. So again, I'll try and find the link for that below. Great book. It's the same pattern with all of the different ornaments, patterns on them, but the same actual shape. So what they do is change up the motif on each Christmas ornament, and you've got 55 here, but of course once you've got this actual shape, you can just carry on and knit forever. So they are very interesting. They've got great ideas for knitting. So I've also got their knitted dolls book. Haven't knit anything yet, but isn't that sweet? Someday I might sort of lose myself here and start knitting up dolls with little Fair Isle sweaters. But until then, I just enjoy looking at this. So look up the Arne and Carlos video channel on YouTube. I think you'll really enjoy it. Another little bit of creativity that happened around here at Life LDC involved my knitting and the dogs. It was extremely cold. I bought them new coats, and while I like the new coats, I don't know, they're hard to get on. All that Velcro catches their hair. Daisy ends up she gets really snappy if she's annoyed because she's 14 and she's old and she doesn't want to be bothered. So I thought there must be some other way to do this. So I did try buying them knitted coats, but I just, my knitter's heart just couldn't let me do that. So I had a couple of older sweaters lying around that for one reason or another weren't being worn. And one of them was this one. Used to be a sweater. Nice pattern. Jameson Shetland Spindrift. This was a body of a sweater. It didn't have any sleeves. It was never going to have any sleeves. I don't have the pattern anymore. Who knows? So I threw it in the washing machine, felted it up a little bit. I bought a dog coat pattern off of a Etsy seller, laid it out, cut it up, put a little bit of blanket stitch on the edge. It's a very rough and rugged, unconstructed edge, but it's really quite cute, and I'm hoping that I can get Lackey, come here, come put your coat on. No, maybe soon. And of course, because Lackey got one, Daisy had to have one too. This one, it's funny, this is, I know that, I'm not sure whose yarn this is because this was a purchase sweater that I purchased in a sale bin on a trip to Shetland. And I tried to felt it in the same way as I did this. It didn't felt quite the same, so I probably will have to felt it again, but I did the same thing, cut it out, did the blanket stitch on the edge, used a piece of the ribbing as the band for the stomach. So this is for Daisy, and this one's for Lucky. And if I don't get them to come here and try them on, I will stick a picture up. So until next time, happy knitting. Okay, for this demonstration, I'm going to do a couple of rows on this flat piece of Fair Isle, a knit row and a purl row, just normal stranding, and then I'm going to go up to a section of the pattern that calls for catching of floats. So let's just start with this first very simple row. It's 3 of this shade called Under the Oak. This is Little Gray Sheep Hampshire 4-ply, and 1 stitch of this orange shade, which is called Change the World, is it? No. It is called Summer Abroad. So Under the Oak and Summer Abroad. When I'm introducing 2 new shades to a piece of knitting, I take the ends together and knit the very first stitch with both shades. Doesn't matter what the pattern calls for. In this case, the pattern calls for the orange, but we're going to knit it with both shades. So that technically is an orange, and the orange is the pattern color, so it will go below, and the background shade, the green, will go along the top. If you've watched that video that I recommended by Jen Culliford, or read my blog post that I noted, you will understand this yarn dominance. Pattern shade always below, background shade on the top. So it's now a repeat of 3 background, 1 pattern. Now when you're stranding, it's important that when you're stranding over stitches that you don't pull it tightly so that they all sort of bunch up together. They should just be sitting the way they normally come off of your knitting, and you gently strand along the back. You're not making it tighter or looser than you normally would, and I think this is what scares people about Fair Isle knitting, but it really is a matter of practice. Don't just sit down and jump into a big sweater and expect everything to be perfect. Start with something smaller. Start with a hat or a little cowl or whatever. Start with something small, or even just start with a practice piece. Just pick up the needles, cast on some stitches, and start stranding. Do not overthink it. It's a mechanical motion. Your hands have to learn how to feel the yarn. If you're a naturally tight knitter, yes, you are probably going to knit tightly, and you have to be aware of that. If you're a loose knitter, same thing. You just have to learn to feel. It's a feel when you strand. You feel how it goes along the back of the knitting. See, so when I scrunch it, it's loose. But when I stretch it out, it's not making the front pucker. It's fine. So that's knitting, Fair Isle or stranded knitting. I'll finish this row and we'll go on to a purl row. I use the yarns, hold the yarns in my right hand. I used to do the two-handed Fair Isle method, but I don't know, something about my left arm. I used to really sort of twist my shoulder and actually developed a frozen shoulder from all of my, moving my arm up and down when I did that. So now I prefer to do this. Every once in a while, I will use the two-handed method. It depends on maybe if it's a row that I'm catching floats in, and it might be easier to do it that way. So it's really good to try all different methods. Getting near the end of the row here. Make sure you're not tugging on your yarns, that you've unraveled enough to let them feed without any kind of restraint, because that will affect your knitting. So there's 3 background stitches here, 1, 2, and the last stitch of the row I'm going to do in both colors to lock that pattern color at the end. So the next row is a purl row. The green under the oak shade is no longer used, but I am actually going to leave it attached because the next row uses the orange and cardinal, which is this lovely red. Oops, yarn burp. Sometimes just pulling a little bit out gets you past the yarn burp without having to get the whole burp, if you know what I mean about yarn burps. Okay, reading the pattern now from left to right because we're working back. It is alternating orange, red, orange, red. So to catch the orange, to catch the red in on this first orange stitch, and orange is still the pattern color. Insert the needle into the stitch in the purl manner. Lay the yarn you're joining in over top and purl that stitch. So now the red is caught in there. I always sort of get my next stitch ready before I move anything. So the red is the background and the orange is the pattern. I've decided that because the orange is the makes a little diamond in the motif and I want it to show up. So this row is strictly alternating one red, one orange, one red, one orange. And I still hold the yarns in my both of them in my right hand. Working all the way across. I hold them separate, but my index finger is always the one that whips up and picks the yarn that I want to use. So we'll go to the end of this row and I'll show you what it looks like. So I'm coming up to the end of the row and just a few more stitches to go. And again, I'm going to do the last stitch in the row with both shades just to lock both of them in. Now the next row is back to 3 green and 1 orange. So I'm going to break off the red and I left the green attached because I knew I looked ahead and I saw that we were working back to this position. So is the green attached where it's supposed to be, or is it at the wrong end? It's like wrangling an octopus, stranded knitting sometimes. Ah, the green is at the wrong end. So you have an option here. You either can break off the orange and join it back at the end with the green, or you can break off the green and start it here with the orange. So since I'm already here and I'm already set up, I'm going to break off that green. And rejoin it. The orange. So this is an orange, 3 green, an orange row. So since this first stitch, the orange is already here, I'm going to hold the green, go round it with the orange, and that means that's got the green. So the green is caught in, the green is the background, so it travels along the top, and the orange is the pattern it's below. So 3 green, orange. And I'll see you at the end of this row. Then there's one plain row, so I'll actually do that also. It's the plain row in the natural shade, which is sort of this neutral shade. And then there's a stranded piece that needs locking down and catching as you strand. So I'll meet you there, okay? I've had to change position because of the sun coming in the front. So I hope you can see still what's happening here. So I did do a row of the natural shade. I did it as a purl row because I wanted to incorporate the blue shade coming back where we're going to have to do some trapping. So I want to do trapping on a knit row first before I showed it on a purl row. So I'm going to join the blue shade in. And just let me move my tape, and let me warn you, I just had a disaster with my tape. It ripped off part of my pattern, and that's because it was a brand new piece of tape. So I'm going to suggest always sort of like de-sticky your tape before you start to use it, in case you do the same thing as me. So okay, so this is a knit row. It starts off with 3 natural, so we're going to do 3 natural and join the blue in. So insert your needle, lay the yarn over your needle, and knit around it. Three natural, 1 blue. Now there is a stretch of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 naturals. 2, 3, and I'm going to catch it on the 4th. Insert your needle into the stitch, bring your blue yarn up, knit around it, let it drop, and carry on. 4, 5, 6, 7. Blue. Then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blue, 5 natural. I'm not going to catch. 5 is an easy color to an easy number to go across. I might, sometimes it depends on the pattern, I might even go across 7, but 5 is a good number. And then there's a blue. Now we have another stretch of 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4. On the 4th one, we're going to catch the yarn by bringing it up, knitting underneath it, letting it fall back down, and continue 5, 6, 7 with the blue. 5 natural, see the 5 stitches are not stretched, but they're not scrunched either. So 5, insert your needle, do a blue. 7 natural, 1, 2, 3 on the 4th one, bring the blue up, catch it, down, and that's that you're locking it back down into its pattern position, the lower position. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and a blue. Yes, I didn't mention that, did I? When it comes up to get caught, it goes back down to get locked back into its traveling position, the lower pattern position. Here you have a 7 again. 1, 2, 3. The blue comes up to get trapped. Oops. Up to be trapped. It goes back down and gets locked down. 5, 6, 7. Zoom in on this if you're watching this on a tablet. You can zoom in. So I'm going to finish this row, and we're going to do a purl row back that also shows locking. Then there's 4 natural at the end of the row, and I will go across and do both, use both yarns for this last stitch. Both the natural and the blue. Okay, there's the first row of stitches being trapped. So now for a purl row. Okay, so I've actually changed camera positions again, trying to get this to show up as best as I can show it. The background shade is going down here to the floor on my right, and the pattern shade, the blue, I've actually going to the left. And that way you can see it will not get twisted around at all in this, this trapping motion. But I will bring the needle underneath the yarn. Okay, so the pattern here is 3 naturals, two blues. And then 7 natural. So we're going to catch, we caught on the 4th stitch last time, so I'm going to catch up on the 3rd and down on the 5th. You don't want to catch all the time on the same stitch. So that's 1, 2, here's the 3rd stitch. I'm going to lay my yarn over the needle, leave it up there, so that's the 3rd stitch, the 4th stitch, it's not being caught, and then catching it in the down position on the 5th stitch. 6, 7, 2 blue, and yes, I do lift up and down the yarn. Sometimes it depends on the pattern of whether or not I can do this while holding on to both yarns. But for demonstration and to show you what's happening, it's actually better if I lift and separate, as they say. So 2 blue, and 7 again. So let me see if I can show you and if it'll show up how I do it most of the time. So 1, 2, and on the 3rd I'm going to go under. So I sort of just put that up and over, my thumb comes up, and third, fourth, it's staying the way it is over my thumb. Fifth, it comes back around, down. Fifth, sixth, seventh. And yes, it looks fiddly, but when I'm actually just sitting here motoring along on my own, it's not. So let me get to the next one, and I'm going to try and zoom in a little bit more. Okay, leaving my hand there as a guide. Let's zoom in. Here we go, trapping in 7. So 1, 2, third stitch, the blue is going to be trapped, so I hold it up. The fourth stitch, it stays there, and the fifth stitch, it comes back down. And you can see it's not tight because my hands just sort of naturally know the how to tension it, and that comes strictly with experience. Okay, one last time. 1, 2, 3. The blue up and over. The natural, I use my thumb to bring the natural up and over. I know my thumb's in the way. Let me do that this way. 3. The blue comes up and over. 4, and then for the fifth stitch, the blue needs to come back down. Sure, that was the 7th stitch. So you can see with all of the trapping we've been doing, the yarns are still separate. This one's still going, the natural's still going down, and the blue is still going into my lap. So let's try this one more time. 2 blue. My preferred method is to just not try and be fancy. Don't worry so much about how it looks. It's what you get out of your knitting, how the knitting looks, not how you look knitting. So 1, 2, 3. This is where my other hand comes up and over the needle. 3, 4, it stays up there. 5, it comes back down. 6, 7, 2 blue, and 2 natural. I'll do 1 natural and 1 with both shades. Just make sure they catch both plies of the yarn. So we're still in close-up mode. I know it's hard to see the blue because the blue is actually quite light. But if you've been watching closely, I'm sure you can see the way it worked. And see the way the blue is traveling below the natural. They're on definite paths. And again, watch the video I recommended and look at my blog post. Links will be in my Life Lackadaisical blogspot purl.com post that you can see that the blue pattern shade travels underneath the natural. And that's what makes the blue stitches that little tiny bit bigger. Same thing with the orange. See how the orange pops? Especially that orange and red row, you can see the orange stitches are bigger than the red stitches because they travel the bottom path. So there you go. That's how, little introduction to purl from me. As I say, you just have to be brave, cast on some stitches, get some yarn, play. Alternate yarns, do little tiny motifs, easy little squares, little X